But again, as I said, it's a lesson that we do have to learn. And I think for young people, it's a victory because now those in power know that without us at the forefront, there will be unable to push any agenda. Again, another reason we lost were some distasteful statements coming from some quarters. And I think it was more of a protest vote against the leadership than actually looking at the content of the draft.
Yvonne, you have the position of doubling up as a youth leader, but also as one of the leaders for women. What would you say with regard to the rights, the aspirations, and the hopes that women had with this ballot coming in?
I think that this is a loss for the women of Kenya. It has been a long struggle. We have been in the struggle since 1992. We've fought very much at Bomas, in Naivasha, and even up to Kilifi for the inclusion of the affirmative action clause, for the inclusion of the clause of not having more than 2/3 of the same sex. And it is definitely a big loss for women. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it up again. We hope that now that no has won, we can be able to go back to the drawing table again and say that Kenya's definitely a new constitution, and that we'll be able to start again from to champion our rights and positions.
Yvonne Hamati, Chairperson Youth for years, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Gentlemen, the whole element of youth, has this been appreciated to the extent that they have a role to play in the shaping of the leadership of this country? Joseph, let me just start with you.
Unfortunately, Louis, the youth agenda in this country has been relegated to the backwater. It has not been deployed into the center of the national agenda. And I think that is a tragedy that informs the political conduct or operanda in this country. I have proposed in several fora, and that has been my signature argument, that we need perhaps to begin on a tabula rasa, redefine the way forward for this country's politics. And so we cannot isolate that from the youth, a youth agenda in it. I know that youth in this country do not have the economic and social and political capital perhaps to push the agenda through. But we need, as a country, as a democracy, to have youth participate and make informed decisions apropos the direction of this country. At the moment, we are reconstructing this constitution, and so the youth must participate because this is basically a youth a referendum and proposed constitution, which of course is going to take care of this country in posterity. And so the fulcrum, the crunch begins basically with the youth, and so the youth must be squarely involved in the whole process of politics of this country.
PLO, we've had this time and again. The youth, feed them, clothe them, educate them because they're the leaders of tomorrow. So when is tomorrow?
Tomorrow is now. What I believe, Louis, is that younger people, men and women, and there are many young men and women, nobody is in the business of merely surrendering political authority to young men and women.
Right.
The young men and women must come forward and offer themselves to the electorate. In other words, the young men and women in this country must liberate themselves from being erectors of tents at political rallies. And if they do that and begin to understand, remember that we are a very young country. And one of the things that you must do is to have a generational change. The problem with Kenyan politics is that we have made politics the site for retired civil servants, retired business people, so that politics is largely at retirement site.
And before
yes, we want young men and women who love this country, who want to make a career out of service to the country. And it is on occasion such as this that you can appeal to young men and women that this is a defining moment. Emerge out of your cocoons, come forth, and let us begin to build this nation.
Right, leading up to the 1 p.m. bulletin, let me just open my lines one more time before we get closing comments from the two gentlemen in studio. My lines are open.
Okay.
Give me your name and your question or opinion.
Mr. Louis.
Yes.
This is Ibrahim calling from Mombasa.
Yes, Ibrahim.
And today I'm very happy to hear that at least Kenyans have united and have said something, no to something which they were not happy with. One thing which we have seen is that in the past, Kenyans used to be bribed, Kenyans used to be tortured, and now Kenyans have united and said some of these things no. And what we have seen is that the way Kenyans have voted, We have seen one, province or community voting for yes, and the rest of Kenyans saying no to whatever those people wanted. And one thing we want to put across to the rest of the Kenyans is that among these people who have voted yes, among them we have very poor people, among them we have people who don't benefit from the government. And today what we have seen is that a long way Kenyans have come in trying to put their concerns across, not necessarily the referendum. What is the message that is going to go to this to Kenyans is that Kenyans, we want leaders who can provide direction, not leaders who will divide us. What we want is also, we don't want these old men who have taken their time, who are beyond their 70s, who are beyond their 60s, telling us that this is the way you are going to be governed. What we want is young people who have a future in this country, who will decide at the end of today that this is what we want. We don't want these old men who will come every time, and we have seen the position the Kenyans have taken. Well done to you Kenyans, and the people who are, the two gentlemen who are sitting to you, next. We have seen the way they have analyzed the situation, the way it is, and if our president can learn a lesson, in 2002, whatever he has been promising us, whatever good things he has been telling us, we have seen he went to sleep.
Ibrahim, thank you for taking the time to call us. Do you have another caller?
Hello?
Yes, your name please?
My name is Rose Arungo Lende,
yes,
and
Rose.
I'm calling from Kileleshwa, Nairobi.
Go ahead.
Louis, what I want to say is that I hope the no vote, nobody interprets no vote as Kenyans, we have given you a new constitution and you don't want it. That is not my interpretation. My understanding is that Kenya wants a new constitution. The constitution they were given is flawed, so they voted against it. And nobody in his right mind will say we gave you a new constitution and you didn't want it. I hope no such statement comes from anybody.
Thank you, Rose.
Furthermore,
sorry, I lost Rose. She hadn't finished. All right. Do you have another caller? Right. Two loaded callers there, Ibrahim, and he sees unity. Let's just start from what do you make of Ibrahim's comments?
If I'm getting or quartering on the edifice of Abraham's call, it would appear that all Kenyans now are calling for unity, which I think is instrumental for this country, because unity and good governance are essentially the aphrodisiac to drive this country into political and economic maturity. And so it's good that Kenyans at the moment understand that unity is basically the sine qua non, or the desideratum to drive this country into maturity. And I wish to commend Kenya. As much as politicians try to pander on their sensibilities, they've been able to resist the temptation to be ethnicized, to be incited into fighting their opponents. And I think that is instrumental. Right. Let me also mention something alongside that, Louis, yes. And that is the arrogance within which the politicians have been conducting their politics in this country, which I think in a sense has even made the proposed constitution be rejected. You remember a few individuals within, especially the banana camp, who were moving around with chutzpah and engaging in aggressive politics, and not necessarily showing that humility and a sense of responsibility, because leadership is not power to engage and fight your imagined or others' opponents. It's about serving. It's about humility. It's about responsibility, and not using that position to fight your enemies, perceived or otherwise.
Right. Pielo, yes.
Louis, I think a number of issues have come out, and I must agree with Ibrahim that one of the things that we must deliberately do, and good leaders do this, you go out of your way to create a new crop of leadership. And I believe that the generation of the 60s must now be prepared to hand over the baton. Absolutely. In a proper way. Nyerere did it, Mandela did it, and President Kibaki would perhaps go down in history if he deliberately commenced an exercise of handing over power and instruments of authority to younger people. We would remember him fondly. And I must agree with Rose Olende. Rose Olende says something that I said in response to Mwakwere Ali, that it must not be said that Kenyans have accepted the current constitution. That debate is dead and buried. We